On behalf of Asia Society India Center, I'd be delighted to welcome you all to this special evening with Nature Morte, a conversation between Asim Waqif and Sean Asim, celebrating Asim's new solo, OVERKILL. I was talking to Ruby. At Asia Society, we're committed to creating spaces for creative dialogue, spaces that invite us to look at our world honestly and sometimes more critically. Tonight's program embodies that spirit. First, a little bit about the exhibition. We'll read more about it, you'll know there. Asim Waqif's OVERKILL brings together a striking body of work that asks us to rethink materiality, structure, and form. Taking the excavator as both a machine and a metaphor, Asim explores how the same forces that drive progress can also carry within them the seeds of destruction. An idea that feels especially resonant in our contemporary. We're cheered that this evening's discussion will bring together two remarkable voices. Asim, of course, whose practice continues to expand the ways in which we understand space, structure, and the ethics of making, and whom we were proud to recognize at Asia Society as an Asia Arts Game Changer awardee in 2024, and Sean Anderson, who brings a deeply layered perspective as a curator, architect, academic, and now artistic director at Nature Morte. The conversation will explore the processes and complications behind OVERKILL, ideas of materiality, construction and deconstruction, and feminine, before Asim leads us on our Sean walkthrough research. Thank you once again to Nature Morte for this collaboration, and to all of you for joining us this evening on We Will Morte Mumbai. Please join me in welcoming Asim Waqif and Sean Anderson.
There you are. Hi, everyone.
These lights are very bright.
Yeah, a little bright, no? We weren't doing the lights with this in mind. Huh? Welcome, everyone. Thank you. Thank you to Asia Art Society for joining us tonight, and anyone else who may be here as well. We know that this week and these days leading up to the fair are intense, with invitations and openings and parties and socializing and all of these things. So it's befitting that tonight we're going to talk about OVERKILL, because anything leading to an art fair, I think sometimes is OVERKILL.
Always, I think.
Always OVERKILL. And it's also a great pleasure for me to be not only in Mumbai and Nature Morte, but also talking with a longtime friend. He and I, Asim and I, have had many conversations over the years, first when I was a curator at the Museum of Modern Art in New York. But we also share this background, I think, that is architecture and theater as well. And so when we were installing his works over the past few days, it was almost like I would make a suggestion, Asim would say, yeah, okay, and it was like clockwork, which was quite nice. And it's always nice to work with an artist who, in some ways, is thinking in parallel with oneself and the gallery and the space. And of course, he's been with the gallery for quite some time now, which is also very exciting. So, without further ado, I like to have conversations about stories, and that these stories lead to conversations and questions from all of you. So we're going to talk for about 20 to 25 minutes or so, and then we will open up the floor to any questions and further conversations that you might wish to have. And then Asim will lead a walkthrough of the space and of the works as well. So I wanted to begin with a question, because earlier today we had the great collector and philanthropist Leko Podar in the gallery, and she's a dear friend, and she mentioned to me that she was one of the first people to collect your work, and she said that it was a work from your thesis that you destroyed or you ripped up, or something happened in the making of your design thesis, no?
Yeah.
And it reminded me that I also ripped up my design thesis. I just didn't become an artist in the process. But I thought it would be nice to share with that kind of beginning, if you will, and maybe take us through an arc to where we are today.
Well, actually, I mean, even though I was studying architecture, but even while I was studying architecture, demolition was something I was kind of really keen on exploring. I even thought at one time I'll become a controlled demolition expert.
Wow.
And then actually in the mid-2000s, there was a lot of demolition happening in Delhi because of what is called the ceiling drive, where a particular land use was designated by the master plan. But the master plan was evolving much slower than the city, so people had made other uses out of that land. And after some very complex public interest litigation, eventually the court said that whatever is illegal needs to be sealed, like put out of use. And they felt that if they lock the front door, somebody will use the back door. So they went and half broke down a lot of buildings around Delhi. And so then we had the plethora, like many half broken down buildings in Delhi. And interestingly, I found that most people tended to not look at them. They kind of receded into the grayness of the city in a kind of the urban experience. But many other people were using it, like migrants and, you know, and then even I started using them in some way. So I've had a very long kind of interest in dereliction, demolition in some way. And yeah, all those years have led here somehow.
Sure. No, I completely remember actually driving through parts of Delhi and just seeing facades, for instance, or just vast tracts of land of destruction. And in many ways that push for development, both economic and social, has led to the erasure of so much of that city's history, but more arguably around the world.
Around the world,
right?
sure, yeah.
And that demolition now is not just about erasure, but it is also about kind of re-employing power to change the landscape in a very provocative way.
That's true, but actually I don't have such a negative outlook on demolition. I think it's important to destroy things to make new things. So one has to be open to change. Actually, in certain situations in India, I think we are a bit stuck. Like the archaeological survey says that no construction can happen around 200 meters of a designated archaeological monument. And that creates a kind of a stagnation of sorts or illegal activity. And instead of a planned or a thought out development. On the other hand, also I look at how infrastructure projects are assessed these days. And I think durability is a very important factor in development of infrastructure. And I've found that actually durability also has negative aspects in the sense that suppose you plan a flyover, it takes you 3-4 years to plan it, then it takes you 3-4 years to build it. The city has already changed, but the design is hard, the materials are hard, so it's not possible to adapt them to how the city is changing. So in some way, I'm looking at the potential and possibilities of demolition, destruction in some way, but also critiquing the power structures that are using it to dominate over, the public landscape.
I mean, I think that the critique is important, not just as a tool for observation, but as a form of analysis. But I like this idea that somehow demolition also leads to a kind of proactive view of the future. Right? It's not a master plan type of view, which I think is a modernist notion, right? That we make a solution and then we build it. But it's actually an iterative, perhaps, observation. And I would argue then that kind of iteration happens in your work very much, right?
Sure.
Would you say then, just in your process, do you demolish or do you create more?
A mix of the two, actually. Some part is very precise, manufacturing, very controlled, very precise. But a lot of the assembly is very intuitive and it kind of destroys the form of where it starts from in some way. And that then creates something else. So
it's always building, right?
Mix of the two. Sometimes I smash things up as well. So
like your thesis project.
Like my thesis project.
And I think maybe many of you would know Asim's work also with bamboo. I know we don't want to talk about that necessarily,
really,
but I would say that your work in bamboo as an inhabitable sculpture, if you will,
yeah,
is rooted, is rooted in this sense of growing, evolution, of change, of taking something down and rebuilding it, right? Because you use that resource over and over and over again in different ways.
yeah. More and more reluctantly, I'm using it again and again.
Yeah.
Actually, early on when I started my career as an artist, I'm talking about 2008, 10. I did a couple of projects with bamboo, and everybody started calling me a bamboo artist, and I was like, never working with bamboo again.
Right.
But then somehow in 2019, I got a project where bamboo was a really good fit, and it was contextually very relevant, and that project was very successful. Although it was not really in the art domain so much as a kind of a public, kind of a public space.
Mm-hmm.
And then again, I have kind of got stuck with this bamboo. But it's a beautiful material.
Yeah.
It's very versatile. I feel, though, that a lot of the new ways in which bamboo is being used doesn't really use its qualities.
No.
It looks at it more like a pipe section, which has to be then mixed with like metal girders or wooden joints.
Right.
While the vernacular use of bamboo really understands how the material is in many different ways. And also I felt that a lot of new architecture that's kind of trending right now, which is parametric and algorithm based, that has a lot of parallels with basket weaving and the way bamboo forms are made. Yeah. So actually in some way I've been trying to use very vernacular methodology, but trying to come to very parametric forms in some way.
I would say that when I see that work, especially those of you who might have been in Jeddah earlier this year for the Islamic Arts Biennale, of course, you created this vast space within a space, and it was also oral. It was you felt the space as much as you heard the space, and you really started to feel the extents of your body in that space as well that you created. And to me, it wasn't about a vernacular or a parametric, but it was you were in a kind of, I don't know, you were in a different world, basically, which in some ways, I think when I look at your work here, and then when we were installing your work here, speaks to that, right?
Sure.
That we enter into surfaces, we enter into spaces, we enter into forms that could be a vernacular, such as corrugated metal. I'm just thinking of the image here, like corrugated metal as a new vernacular or an old vernacular, as the case may be. And so I start to think about then, if you are working with these materials in the way that you are, in the ways that you are, do you find that they speak to each other in different ways?
I think so. I'm not, I don't really care about making that connection, but the connection is there.
Yeah.
Or making it obvious. I don't, but
no,
it's
I don't
there
think
for
it
sure.
needs to be obvious, but I was wondering, like, if you were making something in metal, which really requires body, and not that bamboo doesn't, but it's a very different way of working.
Yeah, but I like working with different materials and different technologies, and I get bored of doing the same thing. I want to try new things. So
that we can figure out. Yeah. And so your experimentations then in this exhibition, in particular around, say, the reuse of pieces, right? Say radiator covers.
Yeah.
What do those then kind of generate for you? Are you looking in the landscape for these disused, discarded objects to become something, or?
It's not such a straightforward thought process. A lot of these, most of these pieces I've got from one of the largest scrap markets in North India, which is in Delhi, in a place called Mayapuri. And this particular show is mostly scrap from bulldozers and earth movers. And a lot of them I bought without thought of what I was going to do with them, except just liking the form or something about it. And yeah, then the assembly process was more intuitive and seeing what works, what doesn't work. Yeah.
So that the works themselves are being formed, if you will, from the remnants of excavators.
Yeah.
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 So let's talk about an excavator, because I think the introduction spoke to that. And I remember when we started talking about this show and you were talking about excavator, I was imagining, okay, so we're going to look at extraction. But in fact, actually, extraction is such a common term now in terms of ideas and resource extraction. But for you, I would say that that's different, that the excavator, the machine itself, that enters into the ground, the surface, the earth, or in fact the remnants of a building, is far more an intriguing tool, right?
It's actually, that's what I was going to say. I was looking at it as a tool specifically, more than, and then I was also looking at how ubiquitous it is. Wherever you go around the world, you find a bulldozer or an excavator there. Whether it's mining, whether it's construction, infrastructure, or demolition for that matter. And it's just made certain tasks really easy. So easy that one tends to overdo it. Or it's really easy to just keep using it, you know. You want to dig a hole, instead of putting 10 people there to dig a hole, you just get a bulldozer for 1 hour and it's done. Yeah. So in that sense, I think although it's a really useful tool, but at the same time, it's a really overused tool.
And it's overkill, right? I mean, it's the thing that I'm reminded of just being on building sites, actually. And you always have the excavators moving around and creating, if you will, the surface upon which, or the surfaces upon which the thing itself is made. Which then lends me to thinking about these sculptures as spatial, but also for me, what's intriguing is standing away from them rather than close up. You start to feel that they are emerging from, or growing from, or even breaking out of the kind of, say, more orthogonal or fixed.
Sure. I mean, at one level, I think although a lot of the processes are very geometric and very precise, but at one level, I was trying to go into a more organic nature of how things are, you know, how materials are.
I think, I mean, speaking of organicism, we have a work in bamboo in the other space there. And I was looking at that in relationship almost in pure diagonal to this piece, right? Both are formed on an armature of a form that then is wrapped or in dialogue with that structure, right? And so in a way, the bamboo work came first, right? That's an earlier
as compared
work.
to this one. Yeah, but I mean, it's like a chicken and egg question. I'm not really sure, because the thought process has been much longer.
Sure.
Kind of thing. But yeah, I did make that bamboo work before I made this one.
But they're talking in a sense, or responding to similar ideas that maybe when we think of the excavator as not just digging or extracting or taking away, that here you've said, okay, the excavator is the thing itself from which we build. Right? So it's not an object not necessarily an object of destruction just yet.
No, it's a tool, basically. It's a tool.
Right?
It depends on how you use the tool. You can make things with the tool. You can, like a hammer, you know, you can put a nail with it, or you can smash something out of it. So it depends on the intent. And it's a very, very powerful tool, and it's there everywhere. So, you know.
No, I'm just thinking, like, from an architectural perspective, no one ever speaks to the act itself. of the
Sure.
cutting of the earth, or the digging in the earth, or the actual demolition to create the space where something is made. And I think that clearing, if you will, also then asks of us, I think, where value is.
Yeah.
Because we can go anywhere in Mumbai and dig a hole, and that hole will create a different set of values for the person that occupies it,
Yeah.
or builds an edge, and,
Yeah.
and so forth. So to me, it starts to, these works actually start to involve a far more sophisticated, far more complex idea around not necessarily where we are now, but maybe where we're going.
Yeah, it's a mix of the three, I think, past, present, and future. Because because I am also looking at kind of the dystopic nature of where we're heading in some way.
Yeah. So there is cynicism there.
There is a lot of cynicism inside me, and skepticism as well. But at the same time, I feel when you are talking about a subject, it's very easy to get into a kind of a confrontational approach with that subject, in looking at it only from one perspective.
Mm-hmm.
So looking at, like, I can say so much bad stuff about excavators or bulldozers, you know.
Sure.
But at the same time, I want to see if I can put in some playfulness into how that idea is communicated, rather than a very antagonistic kind of activist kind of an approach. I've done some activism myself, and I felt with activism that whoever is being criticized gets defensive really fast and tries to protect what lifestyle or whatever that they have. And I found that way, actually, in art, there's a lot of scope for humor, ambiguity, where you can plant an idea, the seed of an idea in somebody's mind, and hope it germinates. It's very difficult to quantify or qualify it, rather than just kind of blare out the message, you know.
And hope that a person viewing a work such as yours would also take on that seed, or take on that.
And maybe it'll happen slowly, you know. Somebody might buy it thinking, cool bulldozer, you know. But then maybe a few months or years later or something, I don't know.
I'm just thinking even of speaking of humor, like a children's toy, you know, it doesn't matter what gender your child is, they'll play with tractors and things to move the sand or move the earth in which they're playing, right? Because it's the scope of making a world, or making a space in which the world could happen. And to me, then I just wanted to reflect a little bit on your cyanotypes as well, because they, to me, while they're very much in dialogue with what you make, are the introduction of a kind of playfulness, if you will. Not just in how they're made, but in the looseness with which they're made. And so I was hoping you might talk a little bit about those.
I mean, actually, I've had a very complicated relationship with photography for a long time. I learned photography, you know, doing black and white, darkroom, manual cameras. We're talking about like mid-90s, late 90s. And then when the digital camera came, well, also the early digital cameras are not so good. But they were really quick. It took me a long time to take the step to get a digital camera, and I got a really good digital camera. But I found that I stopped taking pictures. Some of these pictures, actually, I've gone to the site without a camera first, just to look at it, and thought of certain frames I want to take, and come back with the camera the next day or a little later and just take that much. And in that sense, actually, I find the way photography also has become ubiquitous. You know, you're born, your photograph will be taken. You die, your photograph will be taken. It's like anything you do, you go to a holiday, you'll be taking photographs. And it affects how we remember and experience things. So I stopped taking pictures, actually, for a long time, and or I took very, very few pictures. And then 3-4 years back, during the pandemic, when I had a lot of time and no work, I connected again with an analog studio in Delhi and started doing some black and white. But they were also doing cyanotype at that time on paper. And I had done blueprints as an architecture student, but that's a slightly different process. And it's also more about just copying a drawing rather than playing with the drawing. So I started doing cyanotypes on paper first, and on flat paper. And then because I'd already been working a lot with folding and crumpling, so I started folding and crumpling the paper and using the shadow of the crumpled paper as a mechanism for creating those photograms. But later, I really wanted to try that with metal itself. And I did some initial research, and actually nobody had really managed to get cyanotype on a non-absorbing surface. But my friend who was running this analog studio, he took up the challenge, and we worked on it for about 1.5 to 2 years, experimenting, trying different mediums, different hardeners, different gelatins. And after a lot of experimentation, we had like crazy amount of failures. Kind of managed to get a stable process going. And what I like about the analog printing process is the fluidity of it in the printmaking process. Like these are all digital prints, although, so this has to just go to a printer, and maximum I do there is color correction, not more than that. But here in the analog process, there's so many things. There's multiple exposure, there's how far a shadow making object is from the surface that is going to cast the shadow on, that creates the depth or the sharpness. So I started, I kind of got back into that in some way, and I really enjoy it. It's a really tough process, but I really enjoy it.
Well, it's hard to control, first
Very
of
hard
all.
to control, yeah.
But I would say that the way that you've just described it is also analogous to excavating, right? Because you're excavating a process that really wasn't conceived for metal, first of all. And then it was conceived as a very early photographic documentation technique that was mainly used in nature, right? So I was thinking like solargrams and things like that. So you're already challenging the process, you're challenging a material, and you're challenging the ways in which representation follows, right?
Well, thank you. I didn't think about all that, but
there we are. Yes, on the fly. But I think in a way too, you spoke of memory earlier, right? And how many times have all of us been speaking to each other, and we start going through our pictures to tell a story of something we saw or something that we experienced and so forth. And you're right, it's somehow the ubiquity of the image now is something that is so pervasive and so almost not meaningless, but it has a different value system attached to it.
I think though right now photography is going through a crazy crisis because of AI, because now photograph is not trustworthy anymore. So I think photographs, the value of photograph will get re-evaluated very soon. And what will happen is the only thing you can really trust is what you see with your own eyes, because you cannot trust any image anymore.
But so then you have the sunglasses that have something attached to them, right?
Sure.
Would you say then that your work is also creating a new kind of image?
It's for other people to decide. I don't know.
No?
Yeah, I suppose. I don't know.
Because I think by taking an image and manipulating it and creating a form out of it, arguably that's a new image.
It is, for sure. I am specifically been using that process of taking a flat image of a three-dimensional object,
right,
and bringing the three-dimension in kind of an abstract way back into that flat photograph. So that is a very concerted process in this.
And speaking of that, you had mentioned to me you were working or you were doing research in Japan recently. You want to talk a little bit about that?
Well, I went to Japan I've been thinking of going to Japan for 2 decades, but all my residency applications were rejected mostly. But I happened to get one residency during the pandemic, just 2 years into the pandemic, and that's the first time I went to Japan. And it's a fascinating country and a fascinating culture, and also the way they develop craft or skills is just very exceptional. It's not something that happens everywhere.
Right.
And somehow my connection with Japan has become really deep now, My girlfriend is Japanese, sitting right at the back there. And I've taken my kids to Japan. So in the last 3-4 years, I've been to Japan about 4 times. And I also got invited by Yuko Hasegawa to do a project for a festival there, for which I was doing research and working with Japanese craftsmen. So yeah.
I was thinking
Japan is
of, in
interesting.
fact, the sculptor Kawamata. Do you know?
Yeah.
Right? In Kawamata, by using materials like
Yeah.
chairs, just
Yeah.
the basic chair, and to
Yeah.
create an entirely different world around chairs,
Yeah.
is similar, or is
Yeah.
similar to the ways in which you take image then to build the image.
Sure, but personally, I don't really like to go to many exhibitions. I find museums really boring, except maybe ancient art or artifacts.
Yeah.
And I find it fortunate that I did not study fine arts, actually.
Yeah.
So kind of like ignorance is bliss.
Yeah.
So then I can do whatever the hell I want, and if it matches with some other artist, that's okay, because anyway
Yeah.
I'm coming from a different trajectory. So I don't go look at too much art. I don't look at other artists for inspiration. I'm looking at more environment, society, or situations rather than somebody else's practice.
Yeah. No, I'm always fascinated by, in particular, architects who become artists, or people who trained as architects to become artists, because so many of you break the rules. And I think when we think about architecture today, there's so much kind of
Regimented,
regimentation and ordering and,
Yeah.
and codes and all of
Yeah.
these things, which you have escaped from. But in so doing, that escape creates a critique or a lens upon which that we can look at the built environment or the unbuilt environment, as the case may be.
Yeah.
So for me, that's very refreshing. It's very exciting to look at your work and think about the implications, to think about the ways in which each work tells a story that is not only circular, perhaps Japanese influence, but circular around where we are today and where we may be going in the future.
Yeah.
So it's a great pleasure to have this conversation with you, Asim. And then I just want to open up to everyone here. You even have a question from the audience. Please.
Thank you. It was a very interesting discussion. And I've seen your bamboo work, but this is very interesting to see how you can do separate almost. There's like a metal and kind of non-organic material and organic. But you use the organic form. But only I don't know how to phrase the question, but why does the form you retain the organic nature, but why it seems very non-organic of the application, whatever you've done,
Sure.
as compared to the ones that are behind you, which retain the character, the nested metal of organization.
Yeah.
So I was very curious about this.
Yeah, actually, I never say never to anything. So I don't want to restrict myself to. I suppose organic kind of form making is something that I'm quite keen to do, but sometimes I don't want to do it as well. Yeah. And also there is a lot of harshness and geometry in our built environment. So I don't want to think of it that I don't want to make it hard, or sometimes I want to go in that direction. And actually a lot of these works, I didn't really know what I was doing when I was making them. It's a more, yeah.
I know that. But I was just curious, this is so neat surface and but I don't know, synthetic surface. And for want of a better word.
Yeah. Yeah.
But it's what's intriguing too is when you can challenge how you see something as organic or not organic, right? And so that work that you're looking at, also embedded in the, say, the red and the black, are images of construction, right?
Yeah.
So it's building and unbuilding itself at the same time. Whereas I have a direct view of a work in the back here, which from this point of view is very soft. And it almost looks like vapor coming. But then you approach it and you realize, oh, wait a second, it's metal, it's not. So that challenge of surface, of texture, of form, I think is very much, I think that's very much of what Asim has been.
Some of the subjects that are the photographs that I have manipulated, those were very rigid forms, and then some excavators came and made them very organic. And then I took a picture of it. Then I did a very geometric, computer-controlled process on it to make grooves and cuts with a vector drawing. Then I did a very organic process of folding and assembling it. So it's a kind of a back and forth in some way, I think.
You've become the excavator. Right?
And actually, excavation is also an interesting term because, like, archaeology is also excavation.
Right.
You know,
Right.
and I've been thinking of this for a long time. Like, you know, how archaeologists today are looking at ancient remnants of what people left behind, their waste basically, to understand what the lifestyle was. And then I think of an archaeologist like 1,000 years from now, and looking at what we are leaving behind, and
Be horrified.
Just the incredible amount of stuff that is there, which is has a very like long half life, so it's going to deteriorate very slowly. It's going to be, yeah. Yeah.
Would you say that your kind of claim was kind of experimenting and studying the nature of the material? It was metal and then flat and then again.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I love playing with materials, and I like. I mean, some methodologies have evolved over many years. Some things I've tried for the first time.
It's almost like a study of the nature of the material, how is it going.
Yeah, I like to also test the limits of materials in some way. How much you can push it, or crumple it, or kind of get like a edginess to the form in some way. Good.
One more question, if I may. So why did you say no more bamboo? What brought you to bamboo and what made you say no more to bamboo?
Because I'm more interested in ideas than materials, frankly. But what happens when somebody becomes a bamboo artist is that everybody wants you to make bamboo work. But sometimes you want to talk about some other idea which might not work well with bamboo.
What
So
brought you to bamboo?
actually, as an architecture student, it was a really good, cheap, versatile and material to work with. And I was anyway into rock climbing, so I knew knots very well at that time. And that's how I first got into it. And actually, after I finished architecture, I was doing set design and exhibition design for many years, and quite frustrated in my practice of convincing marketing people about aesthetic decision making. And in one of my very frustrated moments, one of my really good friends used to work at Khoj at that time. And we used to crash Khoj openings for the free booze, mostly. But I suppose something clicked there, because I asked him to fix up a meeting with Pooja, and I just took some papers from her table and I said, I want to try something like this. And she was like, yeah, let's do it. And that's how I did my first project, and that was with bamboo. Yeah. Please?
There's a soundscape in this exhibition. Can you talk about that?
I have used sound in a lot of my projects, mostly kind of interactive things that are generated by viewer movement or viewer interaction in some way. This one is quite subtle. I mean, right now it's off, but the interaction is quite subtle. So actually, it kind of continues from maybe where I started working with bamboo initially. I was doing very vernacular tying and vernacular methods, and at some level, I felt I was getting typecast as like a romantic traditionalist, that bamboo was a good way and all new stuff is bad. And actually, that's not the kind of polarized discussion I'm interested in. I think there are advantages and disadvantages in vernacular as well as new tech. Vernacular can tend to get very repetitive and ritualized, and the real reason for doing it can be forgotten. Yeah. And new tech provides us so much more than vernacular was able to provide. but it has a lot of byproducts and other waste issues and whatever. So I feel really that if you try to think of a sensitive way of developing or progressing, it will be more interesting to try and combine the experience of both schools. The vernacular, because vernacular is something that's developed over hundreds of years and many generations of hit and trial and practice. And also vernacular is generally kind of using local renewable resources, low energy footprint, closed loop energy systems, which is what is the trending subject in sustainability today, as though they are new ideas. But I find that in most pre-industrial society, anywhere in the world, actually, these ideas were very, very inherent part. Without even giving it any value, they were a very inherent part of how people were living. So I'm interested in combining the two. So at one level, when I was getting into this whole romantic bamboo kind of traditionalism, as a reaction, I started introducing interactive tech into those spaces. So then the experience is more game-like, like new tech kind of an experience, but the visual is very vernacular. So that I feel helps blur the boundary between typecasting it in our minds as a something. And I find that is a huge problem today, that we are living in a very polarized world. Either you believe in this, then you're completely against that, or you believe in that and you're completely against this. I am more interested in the spaces in the middle. I think everything is good and bad. There's nothing that's all bad or nothing that's all good. So I want to be able to shift it could sound a bit hypocritical at times, but I like that space. I think there's more interesting space in that. So that's the reason I started going into interactive tech. And I always thought of myself as musically quite inept. I tried to learn the classical guitar in my late teens, where I failed miserably and I can't keep tempo. But when I started working with sound, I really got really intrigued by how vibration and sound can add a very different understanding to a visual. So although it's kind of visual art, but I'm actually looking at more experiential art in some way. And I think it adds a atmosphere, a feeling, which is really powerful. It can be very subtle. You might not even hear it, but you will feel it inside you.
It's a very different dimension, actually, to the visual, which we're accustomed to. But when sound, I think, is embedded in the visual, we start to have a very different bodily reaction.
Yeah, even smell. Smell is very interesting as well. Yeah. I did a project for the Chicago Architecture Biennial a couple of years back, and I'd used this rubber tubing in this very opulent, this was the city library or something like that. But once we installed that whole library started smelling of rubber. It was really interesting, We had some complaints from the guards who were sitting nearby, so we got them air purifiers and whatever. But generally, the way that it just permeated through the entire building, and I think that's really interesting.
So, would you like to lead a tour?
Actually, no.
No. All right.
I think it's great if you guys walk around and I'm here, so we can have a discussion.
Why don't you activate the sound work, and then we'll just sit here for a moment. And because when Asim was working through the sound work, we all felt it throughout the gallery in different ways. So maybe we'll be your audience for a moment.
Thank you, guys.
While you turn it on, and then.
I think the rest people can activate themselves.
Yeah. So it's motion and the vibration controlled, right?
Yeah, and there's an artwork there which is really sensitive. If you dare to touch it, you will have some fun.
Yeah. So thank you, Asim. Thank you. Thank you, everyone, for joining us tonight.
Thanks, Sean. Really good installing with you.
My pleasure. Now I want to go to Japan with you.